Hello, everyone, and welcome to my daily log. Today is November 8th. This is the 33rd day of the war, I believe. Um, Earlier today, I recorded a session with my sister-in-law, whose husband, my brother, is in the army, and I will post this probably tomorrow. Um, so if you see that there's two recordings with the same date mentioned in the video, that's not a mistake. Um, Today, I just wanted to give you a few updates on some points that you should know about. I talked to one of my listeners, and she said that having like a summary of some of the information that may be helpful in understanding what's going on was something that she appreciated. So I thought I would do a session on that. Um, so here we go. So as I said, 33rd day of the war. Yesterday was November 7th. And there was some discussion about, a month into the war, where we stand, etc. It's very hard to process long-term issues while you're trying to deal with the day-to-day. The fact that people are even having the space to do that is because, from a like a day-to-day security standpoint, things are more stable. But of course, there's active fighting going on in Gaza, and that of course makes everything still up in the air. Not really clear how far we'll be able to go in terms of international support, etc. But this is going on, and I'll start with the political angle. You know, one of the things that keeps on coming up, of course, in Israel is what's going to be in the day after, and there are multiple levels of this discussion. I'll just mention a few. The first level is, of course, the political angle. Will Bibi Netanyahu stay as prime minister or not? Will there be, elections right away? Will he just quit and say, I don't want to go on? This, for those of you who don't follow Israeli politics, for the past several years, this has been a huge, huge battle that has been fought. There has been a huge battle being fought here in the country politically between, um, and generally the right and the left, but it's become much more than that, and some right-wing parties won't join a coalition with Bibi for other reasons. Um, this is going to be somewhat of a problem, at least in the short term, if Bibi does not quit at the end of this war. Um, this will create a lot of, I feel, pointless arguments within the country, because it's become such a lightning rod to politically. But so these are things that are being discussed in all sorts of newsrooms, etc. I try to ignore them for now because they're not concretely relevant. But you might hear people constantly talking about the day after, who's gonna, be, going to the chopping block, and who will stick around, and etc. etc. Personally, I also think that it's basically impossible to know what the mood of the people will be in the day after. It very much depends on the situation. Did we release the hostages or not? How much did we get rid of Hamas, etc., etc., etc. But I did feel like it was important to note that this is happening. Moving on to more important issues, still, let's say, though, politically, is some of the discussions about the day after. So let's say for a moment that Israel really continues all the way to the end and is able to completely dismantle Hamas. Let's say that the Hamas doesn't exist as an active organization in Israel, at least, in Gaza, once this is done, and even in the West Bank. Well, then what? So we've dismantled a terror organization that has been in control of Gaza for a long time. Of course, something else has to come instead. And the options, all the options are complicated. So on the one extreme, you can choose to suggest to the PLO or the PLA, Palestinian Authority, which reigns in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, you can offer them to take over. Mahmoud Abbas, the prime minister, the president of the Palestinians, um, is over there. You can let him take over. The problem with that is that we have plenty of examples of his own forces being involved in terror attacks prior to these events, and also of them, performing acts of aggression even now, though on a much smaller scale. So wouldn't that simply be replacing one, horrible organization with another one? So that's one problem. That's one approach and one set of problems. The advantage of that is that you have a system that's already set up, right? They have already governing bodies, etc., and they do lead a group of people. So it's complicated. But that's the one side. And you will see people pushing for this idea. They'll say we want to have a two-state solution, and this is the way to do it, etc., etc. Like I said, it's one way of going about it. The problem is, can you trust those other people to actually want peace? Haven't we maybe learned that doing, this kind of an agreement with a culture that does not want to have peace with you, but only sees itself as building up its military might for the day in which they can attack you, is that really a way to get lasting peace? Probably not. It's important to recognize that even the Palestinian Authority, they, name streets after terrorists. They pay money to anybody who commits terrorism. They pay money to their family, thus incentivizing terrorism. So all these things are well known, and to ignore them will be, it's just impossible to ignore them after what happened here, right? We know the price of these kinds of policies, of ignoring things. Now, an alternative would be to find a local to Gaza, peaceful leadership that wants to take over. That definitely would be a good idea if we could do it. The question is, would such a group exist? Would they exist in the immediate aftermath of the war or not? Could they afford to do so without being seen as, traitors to their people? This really cuts to the heart of the matter of who are the Palestinians, these innocent civilians that we're trying to protect. Who are they? Who are they when Hamas isn't around? We have never seen any of them stand up and say we want a peace meeting, a peace process with Israel in Gaza. And you could say it's because Hamas would have killed them if they did so. Maybe so. But we have to see them. If they are not willing to speak, we can't do the work for them. And even if they do want to speak, maybe they won't feel comfortable doing so right immediately after this. So that's its own problem. Well, what are the alternatives? Well, there are two other alternatives. One is in the short term, for Israel to maintain some sort of a military, occupation, to use a loaded term, of the Gaza Strip, and make sure to demilitarize it. That almost has to be, at least some period of that. Demilitarizing is going to be critical because we simply cannot allow there to be a military force in Gaza that can attack us at any point. So that's another option. Of course, that comes with its own problems. When you have a military occupying a civilian population that doesn't want you to be there, you generate a lot of frustration and anger and tension. You also control the peace, and just in terms of raw number of people killed, the years in which Israel controlled those areas had much less death than we see now. So for those who like counting bodies, this might be better. But of course, we can't ignore the fact that it means subjecting a different people to our military might. It's not something that we want to do long term. The third option, or fourth, whatever, is to say, well, we should maybe settle there and annex Gaza. Now, I'm not sure if anybody is talking about that explicitly, but I'm simply exploring it from a conceptual idea, right? Well, if you do that, the advantage is that you annex people, so you give them equal rights, and now they're just like every other Israeli Arab. They can vote, they can be part of the country. You're not doing a military occupation in the technical sense of the word. Whether the UN will accept that or not accept that, good question. The disadvantages, of course, are you have another 2 million people in a small country with 8 million people that you're basically forcing into a system that maybe they want to be part of, maybe not. Again, remember that Israeli Arabs never want to move to Gaza or to Judea and Samaria. They like it here. They prefer to be here. They have better conditions of living, and it's a democratic country, and they have representation, etc. So, from a technical standpoint, this kind of behavior would maybe better benefit the individuals, but what does it do to their national aspirations, to their national identity? How will that funnel into things? Will they see it as a blessing or as a curse? If they see it as a curse, we'll see, of course, civil uprisings. Bottom line, what I'm trying to say is it's complicated. There is no easy solution, because when one side just wants to fight you and won't stand up for real values, it's problematic. It's a problematic situation. I guess the final option is for Egypt to be willing to take over. The advantage being that there's more cultural, let's say, connection between these two people. But Egypt never wanted to take Gaza, and the likelihood that they'll agree is close to zero, in my opinion. So we will have to see. Here's a few more points for you to take. First of all, yesterday there was footage showing that Israel opened up a humanitarian corridor from the northern part to the southern part of Gaza. So Israel has been telling for weeks now to the Gazan population that they should head south. Most of the Hamas, tunnels are in the north, under Gaza City. In the south, they would be protected from a lot of the attacks that Israel has been doing in the north. This, of course, is part of Israel trying to go way above and beyond the requirements of the rules of war, to make sure that they don't hurt civilians for no reason. And one of the things that has been preventing this has been Hamas shooting shooting people that try to go south, putting blockades, preventing them from going south. We have plenty of evidence that they were doing this. Recordings of people talking about it, etc., etc. So Israel simply, now that Israel has circled Gaza City, Israel also was able to open up a area that they protected. You can see in the video a stream of civilians walking, and an Israeli tank positioned there to protect them from being attacked by Hamas. Once again, Israel defending the civilians of Palestinians more than Hamas cares about them themselves. So that's about that. We also have a dilemma about what to do about the north. On there's Hezbollah seems to constantly be revving up very slowly their attacks. So there's always attacks, and Israel has a dilemma about what to do in the north. It has a short-term dilemma about whether to retaliate with force or not, and a medium-term dilemma, which is that, or long-term dilemma even, which is that we have a situation over here where we have a lot of our army positioned already ready for the north. So if we wanted to have a large-scale attack on Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organization, there's no question about that. This is a good time for us to do it because we're ready. We can have the offensive if we want. The second thing is we know that Hezbollah has lots of missiles pointed at Israel. They're just waiting to attack us when it's right for them. And again, haven't we learned something from Hamas? That if somebody is stockpiling weapons, you don't just let them continue stockpiling until the wrong time, but you take initiative. So that's one consideration. The other consideration is that Hezbollah is attacking us. So we definitely have the right to retaliate. And finally, one of the things that we have to make sure happens at the end of this war is that people feel comfortable and confident that they can go back to their homes and be safe. So in the south, by eradicating Hamas, we will make sure that the people that live close to the border, those in the kibbutzim that were attacked and massacred, will feel comfortable to go back, at least in terms of their safety. In the north, it's the same situation. There's plenty of towns that are close to the border, and they will say, well, I mean, if this happened in the south, why should I trust that it won't happen in the north? What's stopping Hezbollah, which is much more well-equipped, much more well-armed, from attacking me, out of the blue? they're so close, which means that Israel now, if they want people to go back to their homes in the north, has to make sure that it's safe. And that means at least, not necessarily destroying all of Hezbollah, but at least making sure that the large section north of the border is clear. So Israel has a dilemma, both because it's necessary for people to be able to live there. It's a good time because we can have the initiative, and we can put, all of our forces. A lot of our forces are already prepared. One possibility is that we are going to do this once we're done with Gaza, because right now we're fully focused on Gaza. We have a large amount of troops waiting in the north, but we're focused on Gaza. And it might be that once we get rid of the Hamas threat, we can shift our attention to the north for a short while, just to, strike them at the critical points of their martial ability. And like I said, it's not that nothing is happening there now. There's always things happening in the north, but just on a small scale. Okay. A few more little details for you. Some about the local area and some international. So locally, I wanted to give you a small tip. One of the things that's happening a lot is that Israel is attacking, buildings and other structures with missiles. And this footage, of course, can come across as Israel, being very, very, combative and aggressive. And you ask yourself, well, how do I know as a viewer if the thing that they're attacking was really what they say? A lot of times Israel says that in this building there was a stockpile of weapons, missiles, and other bomb material, etc. How can I know? So sometimes you can't know, obviously. We can't see what's inside those buildings ourselves. The intel that the IDF has is, of course, very, very, unique to the IDF and kept secret. But there is one thing you can do, at least if somebody claims that there was a lot of that there were a lot of rockets or a stockpile of rockets in that building or under the building. And what that is looking for secondary explosions. So if anybody ever shows you a video, a lot of times the IDF will release videos of their attacks, and you will see that there's usually two sets of explosions. When the missile strikes the building, you'll see an immediate flare up, but then many times there'll be suddenly explosions that come right afterwards. Okay, like a secondary round of explosions. What that is, many times, is the explosives in the tunnels or the explosives in the building that are themselves exploding. That's why they'll many times be in to the side of the main explosion, or I've seen cases where you really see them even a block over, because it goes through the tunnels and explodes somewhere else. There's really some really fascinating footage of that sort. You can use this information to be able to show people and say, see, why do you think there's another explosion right after? What do you think is happening underneath that's making such a big explosion? So that's a little tip that you can use when discussing with your friends some of the footage that's being released. And finally, I wanted to talk about Brandeis University. So as you know, on many college campuses, there's been huge amounts of anti-Semitism. I've mentioned this here before. And I saw recently that finally a university, Brandeis University, came out and said that SJP, which is, I think, Students for Justice in Palestine, I believe that's what the initials mean. So Students for Justice in Palestine, they were chanting a lot of these slogans about, from the river to the sea and all these other things. And that university has decided that, I don't know exactly what, I wasn't able to find the exact the statement yet, but that some of the things that they're doing are explicitly anti-Semitic or supporting terrorism, and therefore they closed the chapter of SJP in their university. Look, I'm a big free speech person. I in general think that people should have the right to express their opinions. But once you start supporting terrorism and there should be no doubt that what Hamas did was terrorism. You can try to, make all sorts of excuses, but when you take babies and kill them on purpose, that's terrorism. When you take babies and kidnap them on purpose, that's terrorism. And so anybody who does not see that and who implicitly supports or explicitly supports this kind of behavior is supporting terrorism. And that's illegal, for starters, and it should also be outside of acceptable discourse. And so I'm happy that finally, considering the fact that many Ivy League universities downplayed the anti-Semitism on their campuses and are still doing so, I'm happy to see that there is some, that there are some universities in which they're willing to stand up for these ideals, for what I think America and the West stand for in general. One last point about that. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but many of you may be wondering, why is it that these universities are not speaking up against against the Hamas? Like, why not? And of course, I don't claim to be able to read minds, and every story might be different. However, I do want to say that out of the free press, which is you can just search for thefv.com, the Free Press. This is a relatively new media organization. They put out a bunch of articles about this issue. I will see if I can get a link, and I'll share it in the description. But basically, they discuss one cause for this thing is the fact that a lot of these universities are super rich, and the reason that they're rich is because they get a lot of money from Iran, from Qatar, from Hamas supporting nations. This has been going on for years, and has been affecting a lot of the curriculum and the style of things that go on in these universities. And if that's so, again, I'm not saying that it's true everywhere, but assuming that it's true, and you can look up the articles to evaluate yourself, then if that's true, then that would explain why they're unwilling to speak up, because they know that they'll lose a lot of the money that allows them to operate. It's sad if that's the truth. It's sad. It just shows you how ideas like free speech are up, free speech and truth are being bought, right? And being basically paid to be moved out of the way, if that's true. So yeah. Anyway, I hope that was interesting. I hope I gave you some food for thought and information that's helpful. And stay tuned, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.